Welcome to episode 57 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about Cole Caufield from the Montreal Canadiens. And obviously, Cole Caulfield's a very fascinating player. I love watching him. I love watching him score goals and how well he's been able to trend in terms of goal scoring and how much better he's even continued to improve as a power skater in terms of power skating mechanics as well. And Cole Caulfield, when you talk about the overall makeup of his game, it's more reliant on his goals than his passing and defense. He's not a defensive player, not in the PK, and he's not much of a passer either. So the thing is with him, you want to rely on his goals as much as possible and really put him in situations where he can thrive as a goal scorer. And that's what Marty Samuel was able to do last year. He had a really good year last year, and he's going to continue to get better heading in the future. Signed to a big contract now as well, like a lot of these young players and a lot of these young key RFAs. And so with Caulfield, like I mentioned, you're getting a player who can really score. He's really productive at even strength offense. His finishing value is so high, and then his goals per 60 in terms of how he's able to generate actual output on that is really remarkable. And that's what really adds to his wins above replacement value and how much better compared to and relative to other forwards in the league he is at wins above replacement. It's not based on his defense and his passing. It's solely pretty much reliant upon his goal scoring ability and the quality of the competition that he's facing as well, because he's scoring goals and he's scoring goals also against elite players. So Caufield is elite at generating quality and quantity within his shots. And that's the thing when you notice his game and you really watch his games, how he can create from interior space, but he can shoot from any angle, anywhere inside the offensive zone. It doesn't really matter where he is positionally. So with Caufield, he's a key sniper, a player who can, like I said, he can snipe pucks from any angle. He can pick a pocket really well, and he can score high. He can score low. He can score mid on goalies. He can find little openings that other players cannot. It especially helps given that he's a smaller player because another player like him is Alex Brinkett, who's the most similar to Caufield in that sense. But when you look at Caufield and how overall skilled he is as a goal scorer and how agile he is as a smaller player, that really links together. And those two really link together really well because if he was a bigger player, he didn't have as much coordination, he wouldn't be able to pick those pockets as well when he's versus being the smaller player where he's able to understand those pockets of space and be able to wire pucks home through there. And he's really nifty. He's become more nifty. I noticed this at Wisconsin in terms of his power skating mechanics and his puck skills, diversifying his puck skills. He showed a little bit more playmaking ability at Wisconsin compared to where he is now. And now he's just mainly a goal scorer than anything else. But at Wisconsin, he wasn't afraid to pass either. Wasn't afraid to showcase his passing ability a little bit more. He could do some really nice saucer dishes and be able to feed guys on the tape in terms of his teammates. And with his power skating, when he was with the NTDP, it was one of the bigger struggles for him because that's the other thing. He wasn't a big player already, but his separating skill was his shot, and everybody knew that. And he didn't necessarily skate super well, and he didn't necessarily pass a lot. So, which one would you want to add if you're Caulfield at that time? For him, you could still pass and you can still be reliant on your teammates, but take the shot when you can and be able to take as many shots as possible. And so, because of that, best thing to improve upon would be his skating because it would improve a lot of other details within his game. If he improved his passing and didn't improve his skating, it would have been interesting to see how that would have trended for him at Wisconsin, if that would have affected anything. But with Caulfield, what's really interesting about him is the linear crossovers really improved when he was at Wisconsin, and the linear crossovers and the buildup of speed and the agility that he has on both his outside edges. He looks like a little horse when he's galloping sometimes because he's so fluid, he's so quick, so agile with his power skating mechanics and his outside edges now compared to where he used to be about 5-ish years ago. And he's improved a whole lot in terms of skating. That's the biggest thing I've noticed and biggest difference I've noticed. Caulfield's game is his skating, his footwork, his ability to cut back. And that's really allowed him to transform his goal scoring a little bit more as well because you add to the skating elements, and then you add to the goal scoring elements because it allows you to cut back a little bit, allows you to create space a little bit better. It allows you to pivot on the dime a little bit better. It allows you to play a little bit more freely when you have the puck. So you're in coordination with not only your hands, but also your feet. And so with Caufield, he was able to link together those two and put together more sequences where he was scoring a lot more frequently and at higher success. And when he was able to create a lot more space for himself because of that cutback ability and using his feet more often and using his feet in a good manner. Sometimes with the MTDP, it would be a little bit choppy. Like he would still be able to score effortlessly. It didn't really matter who he was playing against, but when you watch his skating, you could see that sometimes when you try to create a little pull and drag release or something, he wouldn't necessarily be able to create maximum space for himself because of the lack of skating, the lack of gear change, the lack of shiftiness within his feet and his edges. And that hurt him a little bit in terms of being able to shoot on angles and being able to shoot inside deception. But he improved it at Wisconsin and then he built upon it and layered upon it in his brief stint in the AHL and then obviously consistently in the NHL now. And Caufield, a player who really likes to use that toe drag release, the pull and drag release. He can shoot in many different ways as well. He can shoot from afar, he can shoot up close, but he's more of a threat when he's shooting away from his body compared to when he's shooting close. He gets a lot more power on his shots and a lot more velocity on his shots when he's shooting away from his body and slightly to the side, like most players do. Versus when you think of a player like Austin Matthews, he can almost shoot from a standstill, and that has to do with physical strength more than anything else. But with Caufield, he's really, really slick at being able to shoot from his hip pocket area and really, really slick at being able to shoot from different angles to the side of his body. And he's very effective at doing that. And it's really allowed him sustained success as a scorer. And he'll eclipse 40 goals one day in the NHL. It's going to be sooner or later. And it's only a matter of time when he's able to hit that mark. And then Caufield, what's really interesting about and tying this back to the skating elements too, it's really helped him in ozone sequencing as well, and being able to extend possessions on the wall inside the opposite zone, being able to use deception in his feet a little bit more. You see a little bit more mohawk pivots, 10 and 2s from him on occasion, so he's able to use some deception within his feet. And so Caufield is a player who can really utilize a lot of different foundational skills. He understands how to use his feet, he understands how to use his hand, he understands how to shoot. Again, the passing, the defense, like those two things that can still be worked upon over time. He's not necessarily going to be a player when he's 30. You're still going to be talking about those elements per se, but certainly he can improve like any player can. And there's a lot more layers to his game than just the lack of passing and the lack of defense. He has a lot of shooting mechanics, a lot of power play opportunity. He's facing elite competition. There's a lot of different advantages that he has, and you want to keep him in that lineup and keep him in that top line role consistently. That's really going to allow him to get to 40 goals eventually because he's not going to be a player that you want to have as a third line checking forward per se. And you want him to have as much ice as possible, take as much ice time as possible, and be able to score as much as possible and be able to win games as much as possible. So Caufield, you want to continue to have his shooting be the main focal point of his game and the main staple in his game, which really can allow him to evolve and get better over time in the NHL as well.